Okay, so the first thing you'll need to do is to cut out your hand. So I will fast forward cutting out my hand. Okay, so then what you'll need is your hand. You should also have 5 straws. You will also need 5 pieces of string. So you'll need to make sure that they are at least 20 centimetres long. So I would use a ruler just to double check the lengths of your string. You'll also need a pen. So I've got my pen here, and then with the tape that you are given, you will need to cut some really small pieces that you are going to be using to stick down the parts of your fingers. So this came from a strip of tape. This is parcel tape that I've used, but you'll have some sellotape. And I simply, if I can find the end of it, okay, I can't model how I cut the tape, but you will just be cutting off very thin strips so that you can stick on pieces of your straw on your hand. So the first thing you're going to need to do is we're going to work on one finger at a time. So you can put your four straws and your string to one side, and you're just going to take one straw. You are going to lay your straw from the very tip of your finger or thumb, and then you're going to measure it down to the centre of your palm. So I'm just going to do a little mark on the straw. So from the tip of your thumb to the palm there, I'm just going to mark it off. That's going to be the first part that I'll cut in just a moment. Cut there, and then I can get rid of this piece now. I don't need it anymore. And then what you'll need to do is to mark off where the joints are in your thumb. So if you're thinking about the bend in your thumb, you've got a joint halfway down, and then you've also got the movement as it reaches your hand. So we're going to draw 2 lines on your thumb. So I'll draw it halfway down, and then down here as well. Okay, so this is where we're going to be making 2 cuts into the straw so that we can move our thumb at the end. So I'm going to cut into my lines. Okay, so now you've got the 3 parts. You just need to pop your straws out. You've got your 3 parts to your thumb. So you're going to now take the little pieces of tape that you should have prepared already, and you're going to start to stick each of those pieces down. What you'll need to do is hold on to the straw. I don't know whether you want to come kind of above to see. You've got to hold on to your straw and then stick your tape down either side, and then really push the tape down hard so that it stays into place. It's quite fiddly, but it does get easier. And your next piece of tape. Leave a gap between each piece of straw so that when it comes to the movement, there is enough space for the thumb or finger to bend. If it's too close, then they bump into one another. So we'll leave a little bit of space there. I'll stick the second part down. And then finally, we've got this bit here. I'm actually going to make this a little bit smaller. Just trim off a tiny bit on the end so it's not too long. Get rid of that. And then I can use a bit of tape to stick that last piece down. Okay, I'll do one more in slower motion and then I'll speed up the rest of the hand. So again, you're going to take your second straw and you're going to measure the distance from the tip of the finger with the straw to the centre of your palm. So about this point. So I'll mark off again where I'm going to cut. I'm going to do that first of all so that I don't get confused with my lines. That bit's going to go in the bin. And then the next part, you're going to think about your finger and how many joints you have. At what point does your thumb bend? So we've got 1, 2, and then a third as it reaches your hand. So 1, 2, 3 lines we're going to draw. So keeping it still at the top of your hand, at the top of your finger, we're going to draw 1, 2, and then at that point where it meets your hand. 1, 2, 3. So we've got 3 joints. So then the next job is going to be to cut along the lines that we've drawn. Please be aware that as you cut into the straw, the pieces can fly off in different directions. So just do it really carefully and catch the parts that you're cutting off. Aim it down towards your paper so it doesn't land on anyone else's work. So here are our 3 parts. So I'm going to lay them back on. Before you do any sticking, just lay the pieces back down. You might find, because I want to make sure there's enough distance between each parts of my straw, you might need to trim, just slightly take off a little bit. So I mean a couple of millimeters off the straw just to make sure that it fits on your finger. And then, stay there. Yeah, I can take my tape. It's really handy that you get your tape prepared at the start. Stick it on the edge of the table, and then it's easy to pick up. So I'll stick the tape over. This is probably one of the fiddlier bits, but you just got to make sure it's pushed down nice and strong. We'll stick our next piece on. Make sure, again, you're leaving that gap between each piece of straw. If you need to get a longer piece of tape, then you can do that. And there's my last piece. Again, I'm going to trim this down a little bit more, even further, because I'm not happy with the space that's in between them. So that was much better. Remember that once you've cut the straw, you can't get it back. So just do tiny changes so that you don't lose too much of your straw. Try and make them line up. And the last piece. Always going to make sure that it's aiming towards the center of the hand. Okay, so I'm going to finish the last 3 fingers. They're exactly the same, and the thumb is the only thumb that has 2 joints. The rest of them have 3, so it will be exactly the same. So I'm going to speed that up now. Okay, so you've now stuck on all of the parts of the hand using the straw. So we need to put in what we would be classing as the muscle, which is going to be the string. So the straws are representing the little bones in your hand, and the string is going to be that muscle that's going to be doing all the work to move those fingers. So this is quite fiddly, but it does get easier as you get going. You might find that your tape is stuck to the table. Just really carefully ease it off. And then if you've got any loose ends, you can just tuck them in behind each finger. Right, so take your string. You are going to start at the bottom of your hand, at your palm, and you're going to work its way through each finger. So you need to follow the straws from the palm. If you just shuffle it along from the bottom, you'll see, hopefully, I don't know, you can zoom in, you can shuffle it along and the string is making its way through to the very tip of the finger. So this is where we need to tie a knot to make sure that that string can be pulled. So what you're going to need to do is tie a knot from this part of the string to this part of the string. So I'm going to create some slack here. I'm going to pull the string through a little bit more in that last joint, and then I'm going to take the bit at the end and I'm going to tie a knot. So when you've got a loop here and a long string at the end, you're going to poke that piece of string through and tie your first knot there. And we need to make a double knot because you will be pulling on the string. You don't want it to come unraveled. So I'm just going to tie a second knot. It is fiddly, but just be patient and you'll get there. And then what you might find, as you can see with my hand, where I've had to pull the string up to tie the knot, I've lost the end at the bottom of the palm. So I'm just going to push the string, try and feed it back through so that it comes back out the bottom again. You can see it just slowly starting to poke out. You might need to fiddle it at different parts of the finger. There we go, I've got enough to pull it down. And I'll just show you for the first example. You can now see that by pulling on that muscle, that piece of string, you've got movement in the finger. So I'm going to quickly finish the other ones off.
So I'll show you another example in slow motion. I'm going to push the string through. I can already see that this one might not be so easy because I haven't lined the straws up very well, but I'm just going to guide it. Might have to wiggle the straws a bit, wiggle the string, and then all the way to the end. So I'm going to pull, I'm going to go to the top joint here, and I'm going to pull that loop through so that I can tie the knot. So there's my double knot at the top. And again, the string has cracked on up the bone, so I'm just going to wiggle it back down, and then I can pull the string out at the bottom.
What you might find, if you're finding knots a little bit difficult, you might get a little bit of tape, and you can always tape the end of the string down. So give the knotting a go, but if you're finding that tricky, then just grab a little bit of extra tape and you can yeah, you can always tape the end down, which I'll show you now. If I can find the end of this tape.
So I'm just going to cut a really small piece off.
And then I can use that. I could always just fold the string on the back, and then I can stick it down, and that will hold it in exactly the same way. So either use a bit of tape or tie a knot, and then you'll see that you can still get that movement from the muscles. So I will very quickly do the last 2 bits of string, and I will speed it up. It's definitely a lot easier to stick a little bit of tape on the end of the finger. Okay, so there is your articulated hand. So you can now pull on your muscles to show movement in the fingers. Just be mindful the tape might just need readjusting every now and again if you've pulled a bit too hard on the string. Okay, goodbye.